Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the training. I've had the pleasure of working very closely with the speaker today. Two speakers today. We have Bob Bowman and his wife, Diane Bowman. And so they live in Orlando and they've been in the game for a long time. They've been investing in commercial real estate since 2008. So they've been doing this for quite a while and they've invested in all different types of asset classes. And self storage is one that we're very, very interested in right now, just with where the market's at. And I'm sure that Bob will explain to you what's really good about self storage right now and why we think there's a lot of opportunity in that asset class right now. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to Bob and Diane. Let them speak. Obviously, today's topic is how to invest in self storage. So, if you are brand new and trying to get to your first self storage deal, that's what we're going to be training you guys on here today. So, go ahead, Bob.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks so much, Sierra. I'm here with my wife, Diane. We have been investing for a while and we like really good real estate investments. And I thought tonight I'd share with you why we like storage units, give you some ideas, some growing markets, and also talk to you a little bit about how to value them, how to underwrite so you can help you determine what is a good deal and give you some guidance there. In the short time that we have, obviously, it's impossible to do a full training on self storage, but we think we can give you quite a bit of content tonight just to help you get started in self storage. First of all, I think it would be important to share with you why we like self storage. Our background, my wife Diane and I we have a very wide and diverse background. I do a lot of the underwriting, most of it. I value all different types of commercial real estate assets. We started in apartments after we spent a few years here in Orlando doing single family homes. And then we transitioned from single family homes. Our first apartment was a 113 unit apartment outside of Fort Worth, Texas, right in 2008 during the real estate crisis. And then we just took off from there. And then later we started buying office buildings. We own office buildings in Charlotte and also in Dallas. And of course, my wife has a really deep background for the last 35 years working with investors and be involved in many different commercial property types, including mobile home parks and storage units. And she did the last 17 years before we started our own company. She was involved with much of the development and the land development and the building that went around here in Central Florida as the chief financial officer for an investor that she worked for directly. One of the things we're also going to share with you tonight, besides I'm going to share with you some markets, some reasons why we like storage units, and then give you some ideas on how to value them, how we do it on the underwriting side. And then what's interesting about storage units, a lot of them come along with some additional land. Maybe there's some additional land so you can put some covered parking for RV storage, boat storage, cars, and you may even also want to put another climate controlled building there as well, or a non-climate controlled. But at that point, you're talking about development. So Diane's going to give you a few ideas and some really important things on a high level on some questions you need to ask if you do buy a self-storage facility and there's a portion of that land that you can still develop. So she's going to talk for a few minutes about that. Having been in the apartment business for many years, one of the things that particularly I like about self-storage units that's very different than apartments, and of course, those of you that are doing single family homes, this better than anybody. But the thing about self-storage units is that we don't have to deal with the tenants. There are no tenants. So that part is really exciting for me. A lot of they're referred to more as customers, and they're not referred to as tenants. And of course, tenants have a lot of rights, but many of the rights for customers in your self-storage units don't apply. Now you're going to have to learn what their rights are. It varies from state to state. But dealing in personal property rights is a lot more relaxed in most states than it is than when you're dealing with the tenants that are in apartments. The other thing that I like about not dealing with tenants as opposed to apartments, every time a tenant moves out in one of my apartments, we go in there and we never know what the condition of that unit's going to look like. We might have to put in flooring. They might have put holes in the wall. We've got to patch up the hole. We may have to paint it. We might need some new fixtures. Some blinds may have been torn up. So it takes time and it takes money to turn a apartment unit. But in self-storage, all you need is a broom and about 10 minutes, and all you do basically is sweep it out unless there's contents inside, and you're ready to rent it to the next person. So your turnover cost in storage units is so minimal. The other thing about storage units, it's considered more as a commodity. And it's just a box. All you're selling here is a metal box for people to put their things in. And the most important thing about this box, about the commodity, is its location, because people don't want to travel for a long way to get to their storage unit. So many of you, if any of you have a storage unit, you know that when you decided and the one that you're using is in fairly close proximity to where you live. That's really an important part of how we buy storage units, is based on its location and its location to a population. So one of the things that prompts people to want to use storage, we call it the 6Ds. And one is when somebody has a divorce, they have to downsize and they split up and they have furniture and they have things that need to go in the storage. So divorce is one of the big reasons that people utilize storage. Death, unfortunately, the second D, that's something that we don't need to talk too much about. But when people die, they sell their home, and sometimes the family that takes it over has to have a place to store certain things. And then there's downsizing. You get to a certain point in your life, and a lot of baby boomers and people that want to move into a smaller house, they have goods and things, Christmas decorations, all types of things where they're downsizing. So that's another reason. And then people that are being dislocated or relocated because their job changed or they lost their job. And so that's another reason why they might downsize. Or if you have a disaster is another one. And then the sixth one that came up that really prompted a very strong increase in self-storage units was disease. And that was COVID. And during the COVID period, the amount of rentals and the price to rent storage units and the abundance of storage units and the building of storage units increased significantly. Okay. So that's like a third reason, the 3Ds, why we like storage units. And then the fourth reason is that when you get a customer, they stay with you for a long time. Many of them, like ourselves, Diane and I, we've been renting a storage unit for, once we started, I would say now that we've been renting probably for at least 30 years. One of the things that we use in our storage unit, because we're in the real estate business, at the end of the investment cycle, we have to hold on to the tax returns and the operating agreements and the investor information. So if anything ever comes up, we hold everything for at least 7 years and we store them. And then after 7 years, we have to destroy them. So we'll go down to the storage unit and we'll pick up the ones that are old. We'll get them shredded, but we'll go back in and put the ones for this year back in the storage. When you have people that have a need for storage, especially people in apartments where space is minimal, and if you get a storage unit near an apartment complex, That's usually a pretty good sign that you're buying a storage unit in a pretty good location. The other thing about storage units, because of technology, things are changing very quickly. And we're getting to the point where we're able to automate and deal less and less with the customer. The property management company that we work with actually manages their property unmanned. And payroll is one of the largest expenses that you have when you're operating self storage. But this particular management company, because of technology, for most of the storage units that they manage, they're a third party management company. They do it through technology and they do it unmanned. And I guess the sixth reason that I like storage units, if I'm counting here, is that there's multiple income streams. For example, in apartments, your basic rental income stream is your rents. And you could have a lot of apartments have laundromat revenue. They can have some utility revenue, but those are not very big revenue streams. The cost of water and the cost of electric and the cost to maintain and to buy washers and dryers. There's not a lot of money at the end of the day, but in storage units, you typically have a retail center where you're selling tape and boxes and locks. And if you have a little bit of land, you can get creative and put a U-Haul franchise on it and rent trucks so people can move their own goods to and from your storage unit or whatever they're doing. And so storage units have multiple income streams that you don't typically find in apartments. Storage units are typically pretty resilient to recession. We saw that happen during COVID. Apartments are the same way. When the economy and things get tight, people start selling their houses, they start moving into apartment. Now that they're moving in apartments, if they have stuff in their house, the apartment doesn't usually hold the amount of furniture and goods that you have in a house, and therefore self-storage units pick up. Okay, the absorption rate increases, building starts going on, more storage units come into the market because the demand is there for it. And if I had to give you a last reason why we really like storage units is that the expense to income ratio is much different than apartments. Based on 100% of your income, 35 to 40% is expenses. So apartments, at least 50% of your revenue is going to go to expenses. And with the increases in taxes and insurance and labor and parts just to repair and do standard maintenance on apartments, you're looking at 50 to 60% expenses against your revenue. So revenue dollars in apartments are shrinking and there's a lot of pressure on the NOI. But in self-storage units, after 35 or 40% of your expenses, everything after that starts to turn into profit and turn into revenue stream for you. And so it's more profitable operation. So that's the other reason why we really like storage units. Now, storage units, if I may comment, is a little bit different than a apartment or office building because when you're buying a storage units don't produce jobs. And so storage units are considered that you're buying a business. You're not buying a piece of property. Therefore, a lot of storage units, when you go to get it financed and you go to get your mortgage, so to speak, a lot of storage units are financed with the Small Business Administration. And a lot of brokers can provide you with a SBA loan because you are buying a business when you're buying storage units. You're not buying a piece of property that creates jobs. And that's the difference in how it's defined by the IRS
Lending.
and all of the lenders and et cetera. Okay, just keep that in mind. So where is the most aggressive most opportunity this year in the last few years to buy storage units. I would say from 2019, about the time we got into COVID until up to today, including 2023, the top markets in the United States where there's been significant rent momentum, significant growth. Most of these are all in the South, in the Sun Belt, where the population started to migrate, especially during COVID. The number one market for percentage change in population growth, where they created a high demand for self-storage units, is right here where we live in Orlando. Orlando was number one, then Austin, Phoenix, West Palm Beach, Florida, Las Vegas, Jacksonville, Fort Lauderdale, Dallas, Fort Worth, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Houston. Those are the top 10 markets based on population growth, where an abundance of storage units and the demand for it and the rental increases were the most significant in the last 4 years going into 2023. Now, the only part of the country where there was declining rents from 2019 through today was up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So unless you live up in that area, there should be some pretty good deals up there, but the demand may not be as strong. And I'm not sure exactly what the job market is, but it's certainly not on the radar, and rental income has declined. So that's usually a bad thing for us as investors because we're looking to grow the cash flow and we're looking to grow the NOI and the income by creating greater equity from rental income growth, as long as you keep your expenses in check. Anywhere in the South that's emerging, there's a lot of cities, there's a lot of other cities. Those are just the top cities. Wherever you see job growth, people moving in, there's going to be a demand for self-storage units. So let me just share with you a little bit about underwriting your deals and give you some insight into that. And then I'm going to have Diane talk a little bit about development here. Is that underwriting, for those of you that might be familiar with apartments, or if you own a mobile home park, it's all unit-based analysis. In commercial real estate, there's unit-based analysis and there's dollar per square foot analysis. A dollar per square foot would be a MOB, a medical office building, or a warehousing, industrial, retail, office, where unit-based is the unit is in a mobile home park is unit-based, apartment units, storage unit. And so in storage units, the storage units are underwritten and analyzed, if you will, very similar to apartments. So you have income minus expenses gives you your NOI. And from your net operating income, you subtract your debt. And what you have left is your money to either pay your investors, and to pay yourself. Yeah. And it's pretty straightforward. It's just basically adding and subtracting. But unlike apartments, you have some different expense categories that are different that you would not find in apartments. And so obviously you would have your property taxes and your insurance. Okay. But you also have technology, the cost for the technology that you're going to pay for and use to operate your property. You're also going to have security monitoring, and you're going to have cameras. You're going to have a company that's going to monitor the cameras at all time. You're going to have an alarm system, et cetera. And so that's going to be a really important expense category for you in order for the security and safety of your self-storage unit. The other one that you're going to have a bunch of fees, lots of credit card fees, because most of the people that are going to pay you because it's automated are going to be paying by credit card, or maybe you're going to ACH them, but that's part of the automation and part of the unmanned portion, if you will, of operating a self-storage unit. And then, of course, one of your single biggest expenses, if you're operating a self-storage unit in the more traditional way, and depending on the size of it, and if you're going to be selling U-Haul rentals and tape and boxes and all kinds of things, you're going to have a payroll and you're going to have staffing. And so you're going to have to pay for that. Those are the main categories when you're operating a self-storage unit. So it's income minus these expenses, gives you your NOI. And then you're going to want to also talk to a mortgage broker that specializes in finances this type of business, because they're going to know how to get you an SBA loan. They're going to know how to get you the best financing and where to go, and with the right leverage, the right interest rate on that. Hopefully that gives you just like a really good general idea of what you're going to want to do, what you're going to look at, where you're going to want to look. And when you do buy your storage unit, like I was sharing with you earlier, is that many times there's additional land, maybe even just a little bit of land, just a little piece that you can do something with that you might be able to develop. Now that we're here, I'm going to ask Diane if she could to talk to you and give you some ideas that when you buy that storage unit and there's some things that you want to do to it, that give you some idea what you should be asking and what you should be saying in order to figure out if this is something that you can really truly do. The worst thing you can do is make a determination that you can do this and develop this, and you're going to lay down gravel and cover it, and you're going to bring RVs in and boats and that, and you're going to get this revenue. And if you go ahead and do this without doing what Diane's going to share with you, you could certainly get yourself in trouble by over projecting an income that you're never going to be able to realize. So, Diane, could you just share a little bit of information about this and what they should be looking for, asking for?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, guys. So I'm here as an advisor and maybe the gloom and doom of developing the storage units, but it's because of my background and doing so much land development over a long period of time that I always want to be the voice of reason when people are talking about wanting to take a storage unit and add on to it or changing it, adding additional things to it. I want to be sure that you're looking at the basics when you do it. Now, one thing I want to say upon purchase, the biggest thing I can tell you upon purchase is make sure that you're getting any signage that comes with the storage unit is going to come with the purchase of that storage unit. That it is a whole sort of newer movement, maybe in the last 8 to 10 years, because so many different jurisdictions have put in very, very strong restrictions on signage. And because storage units are very much a product of localization, that people typically rent a storage unit that's within somewhere 3, 5, 7, 10 miles of where they live, depending on where you are in the country. It's also a visual rental that you typically rent a storage unit that you see either on your way to work, you see it on your way home, you see it when you take the kids to school, but you know it's there. And then when you need it, you go to the place that you know that's there because you want to be renting a storage unit in that visual location that's convenient for you. Many storage units have those great big tall poles that stand up that have the big sign at the top that you can see from forever. No matter where you're at, from different highways and stuff, you can see the storage unit sign. If you have one of those, never ever take it down. Don't touch it. Don't do anything till you know what you can do with it, because those are gold. And make sure that there are no easements on your property allowing someone else access to that sign. If there's an easement allowing someone else access to that sign, there's a possibility that they are going to try and take that signage. That sign has actually been put onto a different parcel than what the storage unit has. And the reason there's an easement to it is because they're going to then sell you the storage unit they're going to retain the parcel that has the signage on it and use the easement to have access to their sign. Now, one thing that you'll hear, you may see this, that it says there's an easement to the sign, and they'll say, oh, that's for the utility company, the electric company, whatever. Make sure that if it's an easement, that it is only a utility easement. If that easement is for anything other than a utility easement, that means that anybody can use that easement to get to that sign, meaning that sign could then be sold to someone else other than you. And the value of that storage unit is in that signage that's there. So don't change any signage till you know what the local ordinance will allow. And make sure that if there's an easement to the sign, that you know exactly what that easement allows. Now, as far as development goes, there is a lot that can be done as far as increasing value and increasing development with storage units. But you do have to be careful, especially the closer into a metropolitan area that your storage unit is. Because one big thing that happens is storage units are typically built in areas that are commercial areas or industrial areas. And then typically what happens is they were originally allocated to this parcel when the area was growing. And then what happened is residential grew around it. Now that land value has become more and more valuable. What also has happened is typically the traffic count getting to that area has increased. When the land was originally platted, they allotted so much traffic to be able to go in and turn into the property at any given point in time. And they approved so many square feet of space to be able to be used as storage for the ingress and egress. And that is the terminology for development, is ingress and egress. How many cars could get in, how many cars could get out at any given point in time. As areas have grown in population and therefore the values of the properties have increased, that also means that there's typically more traffic flow along the main roads leading past those storage units. So if you try to get a permit to develop land that exists in your storage unit, while it may have been approved for more units at the time it was built, it may no longer be approved for those units unless you pay to put in a turn lane and pay to put in a traffic control device. Because what their concern is any increase in traffic will, and the terminology is, impede the flow of traffic. Just because at the time the property was built or sometime during the whole period, it was approved for additional units does not mean that it is still approved for those additional units at this point in time. The other thing that's extremely important is the amount of land that you can pave, the amount of dirt you can move, the amount of land that you can pave that is going to change the absorption, the water absorption in the area. Because again, most of these storage units were built in areas that were originally industrial, the office type areas, commercial, and now the residential has grown around it. With residential, you get a lot of concrete. The more concrete you get, the less drainage you have. The more water flow that has to be redirected, the grass area and stuff that is around these storage units is valuable land in any city, any county, any district like that. Just because you have land there doesn't mean you're going to be able to pave it and put in a storage building. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to pave it, put in storage where you could store the large campers, things of that nature. You may, however, be able to do expansion where you could put in gravel, where you could compact the soil and put in gravel, because gravel will still absorb the moisture, will still allow the runoff and things of that nature. We were dealing with a property out in California that had lots of room for expansion, but it was near a hillside. And the idea when it was proposed to us was to cut off part of the hillside, fill in some of the lower, and that would give us a lot of additional. But in doing that, it would completely change the runoff of the area, causing more runoff into the residential neighborhoods. There is no way a city or county is ever going to approve for you to do a cutout that's going to cause runoff into a neighborhood. So you can't just look at what your parcel has, what land you have, and say, oh, it could be approved and we could do this much on our land. You have to be cognizant of what else is around you and how much additional traffic flow you're going to create in the marketplace where you are. And based on where you are, if there is not a traffic control device, either a traffic light, a stop sign, something of that nature near you, there is a real possibility that if you do too much expansion, they may make you put in a turn lane or a traffic control device in order to try and mitigate the additional traffic flow that your expansion would incur. And I will be 100% honest with you. Your expansion may not incur all of that traffic, but whoever is the first to do the expansion is who the city or county is going to charge to put in the traffic control device and to put in the turn lanes. And this happens all the time. As soon as one person comes in and does it, everybody else is going to piggyback off of it. But from a storage unit, you are not going to generate enough revenue to be able to afford to put in a turn lane and a traffic control device. Those are some of the things you really need to be very cognizant of. The other thing you want to look at is storage units are permitted on the number of square feet per area. That even though that we analyze them when we're doing the analysis, we analyze them on the number of units. It's a unit-based analysis. When they're permitted in the city and county, the city and county permits it on the number of square feet. So you want to know how many square feet of storage is actually permitted in your area when you're doing an analysis as to how much more you could absorb in any given market. So I know that was probably quite a bit to give you in a short period of time, and there's so much more I could talk about from development, but just because you have land doesn't mean that land can be developed. You could have muck under that land. It could be unstable soil of another kind. You could have all kinds of creatures on it. Over the years, we've had to mitigate gopher tortoises, and I've had to watch eagles mate. And just so you know, to watch an eagle mate, it's $50,000. If anybody wants to watch an eagle mate, you pay the government $50,000 to watch an eagle mate. But you can have all kinds of things on the property that can keep you from developing the property that you have no idea what it is. But the biggest thing to keep control of is your signage and your ingress and egress. Now, one little tip I could give you is if you do have road frontage on a main road that you don't necessarily need, if your office and your buildings are set back from the main road, if there's a possibility that you could rent out or sell off the parcels that are on the main road, anything with road frontage has a very high tax basis. That's what the cities and counties like. So if you could sell off the frontage of your property to somebody that needs that retail, and then you keep an easement back to your property, and your property no longer has that road frontage, but you have the big sign back. Remember the big sign we like? If you have the big sign that people still know you're there, but you don't pay for the road frontage, your taxes would drop dramatically by not having that road frontage. on there. So that is a way to increase the profitability of a storage unit without necessarily redoing everything, just by selling off or leasing off that frontage. So hopefully that gave you some insight into some of the things you can do with storage units that are probably outside of what you were thinking of. So I'm going to let Bob go back now.
Okay, thanks, Diane. It was about a year ago. We were looking at these two storage units and facilities, and one was like right outside of a national park, not too far at all. It was either in Arizona or Utah. And then a little ways down the road, the seller, he had a really small piece of land that had some storage unit, but also had some land on it to develop. And we thought, oh, okay, let's look at that. This might be a good deal. And of course, he was selling both of them together. You had to buy them both. The long story short, what we found out was that the land was developable, but one of the things that we would have to have approved by the state is that we were going to have to build a turn lane. And we talked to the state, and the cost to do that, our cost for this little piece of land in order to develop it out was $450,000. And then that wasn't any guarantee that all of this was going to get through all the approval process even. So we ended up passing on it, and the seller wouldn't sell the good portion of the investment. So we just had to move on to another deal. A lot of people in our circle that have been trying to buy apartments, and they found it so competitive. And just so everybody knows, a few years ago, out of necessity, I developed a software product that underwrites many different types of commercial real estate called Commercial Underwriter. And a lot of my users who I met and who were interested in apartments finally got to the point where they wanted another investment. They became interested in self-storage. Because of our background and our expertise.
Eliza's asking how much the software is. So if you go to commercialunderwriter.com, you can actually schedule a demo. So if you are interested in the actual software, I'm just going to post a link in the chat to the underwriting software. This software works not just for self-storage, but it works for apartments, retail, any type of commercial, right, Bob?
Yeah, the product itself is something that, like I said, I developed out of necessity back when we were wanting to buy office buildings because it has a little bit different calculations, but Commercial Underwriter underwrites many different property types. It also produces all of your returns, all your equities, different types of exit strategies. Everything is automated on the software. So if you're working a full-time job, a lot of people like it because it's simplistic, it's simple, it's comprehensive, and it's very efficient, but it does run on the cloud. So if you have an Apple or a PC or some kind of tablet, it runs on all those. I think Sierra has a discount coupon. If you're a part of her network, she gets a discount for her users. And the price includes several things. First of all, I come up with new versions of the software throughout the year. So if you're a subscriber, there's no cost for the new updates. So you'll get all of those updates, and it gets pushed out to you. Since it's cloud-based, there's nothing for you to download. So your software is always up to date. Secondly, I do what's called learning labs, and I do them twice a month. And the learning labs are educational. They're 30 to 40-minute recorded videos that I do personally, and they're in all different aspects of underwriting. I just did one on assumption loans because there's a lot of assumption loans right now that are on the market, and a lot of those loans are on a watch list. Those sellers are in trouble. So these learning labs right now come with the software, but in the next few weeks, we're creating a whole new program, and there's going to be a cost if you want the learning labs. So if you subscribe now, you'll be grandfathered in. There won't be a cost for you. So if you want some really good content and education and underwriting and want to have access directly to us for your deals, that's certainly a way to go about it. The other thing is that we have unlimited cloud storage, so there's no limit there. And then we have unlimited technical support. It's a great program. If you want to learn, you want to learn the business, you want to really get engaged and make a commitment. And like I said, it underwrites many different types of properties. If you change your mind and don't want to do storage units or you want to do something else, student housing, mobile home parks, retail, we love retail. Please get with Sierra. She can set up a demo, she can show it to you. I have a 14-day return policy. I probably had so far in the short time I've been doing this, over 350 customers, and we've never had a single return from anybody said that, Bob, the property doesn't work. It doesn't do what you say it was going to do. So anyway, Sierra can be happy to show it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you guys are interested in the software, you can book a demo on commercialunderwriter.com. It'll actually go into my calendar if you guys are interested in learning more about that and how it works and how it can save you time underwriting, whether it's apartments or self-storage or whatever you want to underwrite. Are there any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves.
I do have a question. This is Melissa. So is the multifamily mindset, is that considered your network?
Are you
Or
asking
Bob?
me?
No, it's for Sierra.
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah, no, I
Yes.
joined Multifamily Mindset. So yeah, that would be, I guess, my
Right.
network. That's how I signed up over a year ago. Yeah.
Actually, your husband was our strategist in Denver.
Oh, cool.
Mhm.
Nice.
Okay. We just wanted to know if we sign up, how do we do that with the discount with you? I know Bob was saying being in your network, there was a discount. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you're interested in the software, you can
Yeah.
book a demo with me.
Okay.
Perfect. I'll just post my calendar link for the demo. There's my
Thank
calendar
you.
link for the demo.
Okay. Thank you.
So, but thank you, Sierra.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.